Today's Blindside is an archive of a BBC Radio 4 documentary called Into the Manosphere, which was originally broadcast on Sunday, 3rd of November 2019. Into the Manosphere is BBC producer Alvaro Alvarez's account of his time spent with men's rights activist Phillip Tanzer, both at his home in the Scottish Highlands and during his trip to Chicago to attend the 2019 International Conference on Men's Issues. It's made by the same production team behind the BBC 3 documentary I Am a Men's Rights Activist, which is available to view on the BBC Stories YouTube channel. I'll leave a link to that because if you haven't seen it, I think it's well worth watching. And if you join me tomorrow over on the Glass Blind Spot, I'll be talking to the star of both documentaries, Phillip Tanzer, who'll be telling me what he thought of them and what sort of response their broadcasts have generated. So don't forget to join me for that, and in the meantime, I'll leave you with the possibly misleadingly titled Into the Manosphere.
My name is Phillip. I'm originally from Germany. I'm 41 years old, but look much younger, so I've been told. I'm a man. I'm covered in tattoos almost from head to toe.
And I'm Alvaro Alvarez. I'm a man too, and a BBC producer. I first met Phillip Tanzer when I was looking for someone to follow to the International Conference on Men's Issues in Chicago, a summit of men and women, actually, who think feminism has gone too far. They are part of what's known as the Manosphere, a loosely connected network of different groups, from the men fighting for fathers' rights to those who don't want anything to do with women ever again. Phillip is going to be our guide into this world. I want to understand how someone becomes part of this manosphere, with its controversial views towards women and gender. Does Phillip really belong there? And can he be persuaded of other ways to tackle what he sees as a crisis in masculinity? So, meet Phillip at his home in the Highlands of Scotland.
My dog is called Wolfie. He is a half wolf and half Malamute. So the problem is I live in one of the most beautiful parts of Europe, and every day I take a walk on this beautiful beach, and the only thing that I can think of is men's issues and creating a website. I feel like I have to do something and I can't look away. Yeah, so welcome to my house. I actually completely built it myself. I didn't really have any building experience, and I just used Google and a couple of do-it-yourself books. In Germany, we actually say that there are 3 things that make you a man. It's building a house, planting a tree, and becoming a father. It's natural wood, untreated natural wood, natural stone that I collected in a quarry myself. And I have to say, while I was building it, almost every night I would cry myself to sleep, not because I was sad or anything, just physical exhaustion. Right. So when I built my house, I had 2 things in mind that my house had to accomplish. It had to be cozy for Christmas and spooky for Halloween, my 2 favorite holidays. And so my house looks like a Canadian log cabin, and I would say it has a Game of Thrones vibe in here. So this is my man cave, my sanctum sanctorum. Huge collection of comic books and an even bigger collection of CDs because I used to work as a alternative rock DJ.
Phillip also used to be an adult movie star. He was very successful at it for a couple of years.
So I would say that a lot of the role models that I felt I didn't have in my real life, I found in comic books and in movies. And maybe the most important one was Spider-Man. This phrase from Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. He taught me that if I see any kind of injustice, I have to help.
a few other important things to know about Phillip before he guides us into the Manosphere.
So when I was a teenager, or even when I was a little kid, I already knew that I was attracted to men. And then I started experimenting with a lot of different styles of clothes. I was going to school in skirts and with makeup, but gothic, in a gothic punk style. I would say today you would call it gender identity. Was always an interesting topic to me, and masculinity itself.
After school in Germany, Phillip spent 3 years doing military service.
In the military, I noticed for the first time real problems in society when it came to men. So almost all my comrades from the military that I was close to, they lost their children in custody battles. Obviously, these are one-sided stories. I know the story from the side of the man, but it felt like they were pushed out of the lives of their sons and daughters, and it really destroyed them, some of them emotionally. And at the age of 31, 32, I thought I need to try women again because I didn't feel complete. I also realized, oh my God, I could have a family. And I immediately felt like I don't want to lose my children. For some reason, I really don't know how, I came across a video by Girl Writes What. Her name is Karen Strawn, one of the most famous men's rights activists.
When it comes to the well-being of others, they come first, men come last. This is just the way it has always been. Seats in lifeboats, being rescued from burning buildings, who gets to eat?
I'm like, oh my God, that's spot on. And from there you start going down the rabbit hole. Then you hear about the movie The Red Pill by Cassie J.
Every society survived based on its ability to train its sons to be...
93% of workplace fatalities are men. How can anybody not be angered by it?
All of a sudden, you become a men's rights activist. Hello, hey. So this is my little art gallery slash hairdressing studio slash political debate podium. Hi there. No, come in, have a look around. Just ignore the fact that we are having an interview here.
Just a casual TV.
Exactly.
But what about in terms of, for example, rights? Rights to vote, rights to own property, rights to choose their profession?
So in... men and women should both have the same right to vote and should have the same responsibility, the duty to serve the country. And you could question, should everybody then have the same responsibilities and give the... just a second. Excuse me, just a second, excuse me. Just challenge me for a second. But you clearly had a reaction, so you were interested.
Yeah, but I didn't. I'm actually leaving anyway.
Okay, cheers, bye.
Can you tell me what happened there?
There was a reaction from the girl, and she said, "Ugh."
Does it happen often to you?
It only happens when I can't interact with the person. So I think that's a big problem in our society at the moment, that opposing sides don't want to engage and talk to each other. It's just headbutting and yeah.
Phillip is very active on social media, which is where he met Graham Golden, a former policeman from Edinburgh. They've been sparring on Twitter for months about Phillip's belief that the authorities ignore domestic violence against men.
Oh.
Hi, Graham.
Hi. So how are you today? You good?
Very, very good. quite excited about going to Chicago tomorrow.
Yeah. What's your purpose of going to Chicago? What are you thinking?
Well, so I joined the men's rights movement about, I would say, like 1.5 years ago. And I live in such a remote place and it's such a small place. I can never talk to real people about all these issues. Well, I can talk about men's issues, but not with people that are actually interested in men's issues.
Okay. From my side of things, 30 years in the police service, and the vast majority of violence, where I'm going to go with this one, the vast majority of violence, the offenders that I work with were male. Fact. We've talked about my experience of my father. He died by suicide many years ago, and it made me really think, what's happening here? Why can't people reach out? Why are our prisons full of young men? But there's a perception, and it's a perception that I've probably had in the past about, I don't speak to men's rights activists because, they're sinister, they're anti-women, they're anti-feminist, and some people say that they're doing nothing for men, and that's the perception. And
but I can tell you, I mean, I would assume, like from the interactions that we had over the last year, do you feel like I try to be as balanced as possible?
Yeah, no, as I say, there's glimpses of that. Look, Phil, there's nice glimpses of, but there is a dark side. There is a more sinister element out there. They just take it personal and they fight back. So listen, you have a great time.
Thank you so much, and I'm sure you'll hear about it.
Yeah, and Alvaro's going to set us up to meet maybe when you come back.
Yeah.
And have a sort of chat how the conference went. Okay.
Gotta run.
I just want to be clear about something here. Phillip is a men's rights activist. It's different to an incel, an involuntary celibate young man who blames feminism for his lack of success, or men going their own way. Men who have decided to reject the world of women altogether. But all these groups, together, make up the Manosphere. It's the extremes that dominate the headlines. We don't hear so much from people like Phillip. Before we head off to the conference, here is some context from feminist scholar Tracy Farrell at the Open University in Milton Keynes, who's done research into the language of the movement.
So we looked at the online forum Reddit because this seemed to be one of the places where these groups were active, and we followed some different communities from 2011 until 2018, and we looked at about 6 million posts, which was about 300,000 conversations. What we found was that similar to how people might tend to make feminism one sort of monolith that has one specific ideology, we found that different groups had different flavors of misogynistic content and tended to engage in either one type or the other a little bit more or less. We did find that authorship in these communities tend to be increasing, especially from about 2016. We found that the level of language appeared to be becoming more hostile or more violent as time goes on. And one of the things we also wanted to test was to see if misogynistic attitudes and other types of violent attitudes would be co-occurring, like homophobia or racism, and we found that that is indeed the case. My feeling is that rather than worrying about the dangers of the manosphere as such, we should really be doing more to analyze it and to understand it, because I think this is where we'll find the clues about how to help the different people that find comfort in these communities. As we're talking a lot about issues of social exclusion and loneliness, doing more to understand how best to integrate people who are feeling excluded into society would be a good next step.
That's exactly what I'm hoping to do by going to the conference with Phillip. Okay, so we are right now in Gatwick Airport. Which one is our flight? We are in front of the panel here. 4 p.m. to Chicago, that's right?
Please place any small items of hand baggage under the seat here.
Okay, perfect. Hello. Okay, Phillip, so we made it. Tell me, where are we now?
Yeah, so we arrived in the conference hotel. It's pretty big.
And now we're going to register, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect. Yeah, we're going out.
Okay, welcome everybody.
to the 2019 International Conference on Men's Issues. My name is Karen Strawn. I don't know if any of you all know that, but and unless I am bundled off in a paddy wagon and taken away by the riot police, or keel over from alcohol poisoning at some point, or fall victim to a walnut-wielding assassin, I will be your master of ceremonies in this room for the full 3 days, the Sheridan Grand Ballroom.
It was wonderful. I love the sense of humor. And this morning when I came to the conference, I didn't know what to expect, really. I'm like, I'm home. Oh, the speakers are starting. I have to go back. I'm going this way.
My name is Matthew Kuntz, and I live in Seattle, Washington. I don't go out and hand out papers or scream on the streets or anything like that. I just do in my own private life, talk about these issues and share my point of view. There's two major issues that come to my mind. One being male reproductive rights. There being much fewer options for men to control whether or not they become a father. And then the other issue that I find very troubling is genital cutting for boys. It's very common.
Hi, I'm Michael. I'm from Minnesota. I would say the main reason I am here is to, network with other men's rights activists, pick up techniques, but also not to feel like you're in a bubble. You find yourselves, as a guy, in a scenario where you're dealing with, let's say, someone of the opposite sex, and something happens, you're like, well, what happened to me wasn't really fair. And you start wondering, well, did anyone else not see, what just happened? And I do think that feminism comes from a woman's need to procure resources for herself. I think it's always been a rather greedy movement that has really placed a lot of emphasis and care towards the protection and provision of the females in the society.
At the moment we're at the keynote room and we're about to listen to Phillip Davies.
He is Conservative MP for Shipley.
He is fighting for recognition of male issues in British politics.
My battle is with those few militant feminists, specifically with those who say they are fighting for equality, when in reality they want nothing of the sort. Their version of equality is literally whatever they think benefits women. They want equality when it suits, and special treatment when it suits. And I'm also at odds with the politically correct males who pander to all this nonsense. Either because they're too naive to realise what is actually going on. Never mind the fact that you're more likely to be a victim of violence if you are male. The obsession with violence against women and girls is justified because it is, we are told, gender-based. I, for one, will continue to fight for the truth and what I believe is right, no matter what others try to throw at me. Because this battle is too important to lose. Thank you.
This is Deanne Lorraine.
I'm a relationship and dating coach and also the author of Make Love Great Again. I'm not quite sure if this microphone is good, but thank you, strong man. What did you say? Strong man for fixing it. Coming to the rescue. Dear Father, I love you so much. I needed you so much growing up. I blame the system. I blame no-fault divorce laws and the family courts for letting you so easily divorce Dad and move us kids far away. Everyone needs their fathers. To all the fathers out there, you are needed. We need you, we appreciate you, and we love you. So this is a letter that I wrote. I found a very common pattern that men were needing relationship and dating advice and they were struggling with women. And the most common pattern I saw is that they didn't have a strong father figure growing up. And messages kept saying, you know, men, be softer, be more docile, be more accommodating, be more like women, be less toxic. It was painting and demonizing traditional masculine qualities as toxic and wrong. So I think we need to go back to appreciating our differences instead of demonizing them.
Can we, sorry, Philip, can we kind of like talk about you now, your kind of like your personal situation in your dating life or what you're looking for? Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, sure, of course, yeah.
Been in the
Yeah,
past.
what's your situation, Philip?
So, I'm hyper careful, I would say.
Me too.
There are not a lot of women out there that are at the same time free and like liberal and conservative, are crazy but have very strict values. It's so difficult.
It is really difficult, yeah, because I myself am not married yet. I don't have a family, and this is something that I've always wanted, and I really never imagined that I'd be in the situation that I'm in right now. But I do feel like I'm a victim of today's culture, and to find a real man who's confident but who also wants a family, at least for me, it's been difficult.
Men get hurt as well as women do, and this again based on 65,000 people.
So this was one of the more important issues for me. It was the incorrect portrayal of domestic violence statistics.
One thing I really feel I have to push Phillip on is this fixation with male victims of domestic violence. Can I read you something different?
Of course.
So I have here figures of the Office for National Statistics in the UK.
Yeah.
An estimated 7.9% of women and 4.2% of men experienced domestic abuse in the last year. This means almost twice % of women experience domestic abuse than men in the UK. You think these figures are not correct?
I think that similar to the studies that were just presented, you have to look into how this study was concluded.
But you don't, if you read this, you don't believe this.
Did I say that?
No, I'm asking you, it's a question.
Okay. There are people that are very focused on how big the percentage is. And then there are people that say it doesn't matter how big the percentage is, it only matters that people get help. So I think both things matter. I think we have to look at statistics and we have to look at no matter what the statistics say.
So what are we gonna see now?
So now we're gonna listen to Carl Benjamin, also known as Sargon of Akkad, one of the speakers that I'm most looking forward to. I was a star in my own rights when I was a porn actor, but you still feel like, oh my God, I'm meeting somebody who's famous.
Phillip never actually engages in anything close to hate speech. But I wonder about his excitement at seeing the YouTuber Carl Benjamin, who's widely seen as part of the radical right, even far right. Carl Benjamin insists he's just a defender of free speech.
There are many men leading lives of quiet desperation. That is, those who do not simply choose to put an end to their suffering. It may come a time that any one of us could be in that position. So I say again, you have to keep going. Those men need you. Thank you.
He's joked about raping a female British MP. He's been banned from crowdfunding site Patreon for racist language. He was a ringleader in the Gamergate scandal a few years ago, when male gamers targeted female players online over what they saw as women taking over the video game world. You get the picture.
I seem to have had a standing ovation for the speech I gave, and they're doing nothing illegal. They can tell the jokes that they want to tell, they're free to do that. And if the feminist movement doesn't like it, well, the feminist movement can go run and jump off a bridge. I don't care. I don't measure myself by their standards, neither do these chaps. They don't have to. I think it's because I can empathise with the problems they have.
Tracy Farrell, the feminist academic, was not in Chicago. But this is what she had to say when I interviewed her later about the presence of people like Carl Benjamin in the Manosphere.
The connection with the far right has been observed also by some key members of these communities. I've read some things online where they're talking about the feeling that their community has been taken over by members of the far right. And I would say that just like with anything, you need to observe your bedfellows and ask yourself the question of why is it so easy for these groups, even if they've infiltrated your group, to find quarter there. So if you're a men's rights activist that does not have an interest in discriminating against women, you still have to ask yourself, why is it that the far right feels like they're going to find a sympathetic ear inside of my group? I would definitely say that that's a reflection point for those communities.
Check, check, 1, 2, 1, 2. So today is Monday. The conference finished last night. I'm tired and exhausted and very, very happy about the conference.
The night before, Phillip had told me a story that really shocked me. I'm not a psychologist, but I think it is significant. I got him to retell it to me.
My mother left the family when I was around 10 years old with a man from South Africa. He was not really a nice guy.
He was a weapons dealer, and he ended up in prison.
It was like a dark version of James Bond.
One night, when he was 15, Phillip defended his mom against her new husband's verbal abuse.
And at that moment in time, my mom woke up from this relationship and fought back against him. And after a couple of months, she decided to leave him.
He and his brother were on the phone to her, organizing logistics, when they heard the man attacking their mother.
And my brother took the telephone, and my brother heard 3 shots. And then the telephone was put on the hook. And it's hard to describe, but when I heard that she was dead, I could literally see the German version of the word dead in huge letters in the room. It was kind of like almost like pushing in my face. It was an incredible, it's as if reality collapses for a moment.
Yeah, I think if some people had this experience, they would have maybe gone the way of like hating men. It's such a dramatic...
Yes, of course I agree, and I can understand that people due to negative experiences become angry, but this anger should never inform your action. Your hope and love should inform your action.
Good morning, good to see you.
Good to see you, well. Good to see you. Yeah.
So, where do you want to go?
I think we should go into the garden. The sun's out. Let's go enjoy.
Back in Scotland, Graham and Phillip meet up as planned after the conference. I'm just going to start with a very broad question. What does it mean to be a man?
You know, for me, it's about being true to yourself, and you know the fact that I was born a man. I'm born a boy, born a man. I think as you get older, you start to realise that being a man is just being yourself and being free to be who you really, really want to be. And I do realise that in the early years of my manhood, that was challenging. There's a friend of mine in the States calls it the mandate of masculinity, the expectation to behave in a certain way. And I think it's very true when it comes to men. It's only, as I say, when I've been in my, you know, in the last 10, 15 years where I've started to really understand more about the subject that I've found myself being more authentic to myself. And the whole phrase, be a man, it's terrifying for a lot of young boys. I find that still when I work with young men.
I find that be a man, I find that very comforting. Mm-hmm. I really like it, and I really like the thought of taking responsibilities.
You know, I work in prisons from time to time, and I remember a couple of years ago, and I've still kept the flip chart sheet. I went into this group of 10 or 12 young men who were either new dads or about to become new dads. And the question I asked them was, what's your role as a man? What's your role as a father? And I got some beautiful words from these young men around caring, loyal. You know, they want to be the provider. They want to be able to be there for their children. Some really nice traits of masculinity that they were describing.
But society needs to help them to be able to play this role. When I watch commercials, the dads are always the idiots. Like they
slowly
always
changing. It's slowly changing.
Really?
But it's still there. It's still
Okay.
there. But we hear this phrase, toxic masculinity, which I detest. I don't like that phrase. But until we see more men standing up to these types of issues and taking responsibility, I think we're still going to find ourselves being judged.
That's where I drastically disagree. I truly believe that these organizations that clearly say men are the problem, women are the victims, to me, they created a narrative, and this narrative has always existed. Men have always been depicted as the protectors and the villains. And because most of violence is perpetrated by men. But now they're not being shown as the protectors anymore, just the villains. And if man can't also say, you also hurt me, like society hurts me, and women can also hurt me, if we can't say that, we create situations where a lot of anger is being built up. If you're constantly being attacked and you feel like, sorry, I didn't do anything, if our goodness is not being appreciated and just being taken for granted and saying, well, you might not be part of the problem, but your goodness is just reparation for the badness of all other men.
So I think, organisations that you've discussed there, I know many people who work in these organisations and they're good people, and they're coming.
I don't doubt that. And the issue is, will victims get the help that they need? That's my issue.
Again, we can keep going backwards and forwards, and I think it's important that we get across to people that we care about victims from both sides. But from time to time, we do need to focus on male suicide. We need to do that at the expense of maybe time looking at females who die by suicide. And I think when you start to move forward in the prevention world, we need to have some brave, courageous conversations. You know what? If that means for this part of time we're going to talk about male perpetrators and female victims, I'm personally okay with that. But maybe next week let's talk about male victims.
But we won't.
If you want to, if that's how your focus is going to be, is about challenging the narrative that you're seeing and stuff like that, I'm not going to say to you, don't do that. That in many ways, am I a men's rights activist? Yeah, I want things better. I lost my dad to suicide. Yeah. If you were to go out there and start to go into groups and organisations and start to talk, I think you would get a lot of compassion for your message, because I think that there is an understanding in society that boys are struggling academically. The evidence is there. When you look at, I said, at prisons, it's full of young men. So there is a compassion.
But there is a very strong narrative saying it's because boys are caught in gender norms, and I think there is a lot of victim blaming going on. In parts, yeah, it needs to come from us. But there also need to be changes in society.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. And the air needs to change. We need a different form of oxygen that we breathe. Yeah. That actually, you're taking me out of my echo chamber, as you call it, from time to time. And I think, yeah, you're right. Twitter is an echo chamber. If you don't have the courage to step outside that echo chamber from time to time, then you'll keep seeing things in the same way. And I think I go back, I'm in many ways I'm challenging your narrative today, right, in a respectful way, and as long as the challenge is respectful, there shouldn't be anything wrong with that.
I need hot chocolate. Were you
no, I'm not cold. No.
Well, you're Scottish.
Yeah, I'm used to it.
Hello.
Hello, Phillip.
Hi, how are you doing?
Hello, how are you? How are you doing? Listen, we just wanted to give you a final call, kind of like to let you know that the program is going out next week.
Cool.
And then we have like a couple of questions. Phillip, we have included in the program, we talked with a feminist academic. She's found a rise in misogyny and a rise in kind of like sexist terms and sexist words used in these groups. Do you worry at all that maybe that there is a rise in a misogynistic worldview?
I would say I'm afraid that the culture war is getting worse and worse. So I think that overall hate increases. And yes, every time I see anything hateful coming from the Manosphere, I call them out.
And Phillip, it was a big focus in the conference.
Yeah. When we were at the conference, I was a little bit sad that there wasn't a stronger focus on men's rights at the men's rights conference, that the culture war segment took so much attention. But especially after watching the videos again, after coming back from the conference, I realized why that is the case. Because it's not just men's rights that are at stakes at the moment. It's this whole culture war that is really blowing up in everybody's face. And
so which side of the culture war are you in?
Unfortunately, I feel like people are being pushed to opposing sides. Obviously, I'm on the men's rights side. I'm also pushed to the conservative side, which I find weird. I'm pushed towards the side that opposes the LGBTQ community, even though I'm part of the LGBTQ community. So I feel like because I'm pro free speech, because I'm pro questioning things, I have to oppose all these groups that in parts have very valid points. And I'm terrified, and that might answer your question about the misogyny in certain parts of the Manosphere. I feel like the people that were open to respectful conversation in the past are so polarized now that they shut down, and that's incredibly dangerous.
Phillip, listen, thank you very much for everything again. Thank you very much for being open with us, and thank you very much for letting us go with you to all these places. It was very interesting. It was a very interesting ride.
It was my pleasure. It was a great pleasure meeting you, and I really enjoyed all our talks as well, because if you talk to somebody who's outside, obviously you also look at your own views and you constantly have to think about where you're coming from, which I think is a very, very good thing.
Yes, to keep having a conversation.
Brilliant. I wish you all the best. I'm right in the middle of at the beginning of my Halloween festival, so I have to run to my zombies and pumpkins now. Thanks a lot. Cheers. Bye. Bye.
Can't you see it too? There's an elephant in the room.